Perfect. All right, we are good to go. Team, thank you for hopping on this audio recording of Jason Princeton, our sales director, and me, that's Samal, your corporate trainer. This is part of our this is not part of this is our 2Be's in a pod segment that training puts out once in a while when we do get time and when we do have some awesome content to share. Jesse's obviously having some time off right now, so I will be um, hosting this call by myself. But we have some awesome content, and really, this came about from me just having a very tiny epiphany, which might cancel each other out because I feel like epiphanies are huge, but it was a tiny epiphany. So you can almost call it like a Christmas light. A little Christmas light went off because the last couple of weeks we've been working on litmus and virtual store visits, and this last week and a half we've been revamping our virtual boot camp slides, and what a phenomenal refresher it has been on the sales process and things that are going on. And now also I've had the luxury of sitting in on quite a few Power of Four calls with some stores, and the feedback and the issues and the solutions and the ideas. They're just I'm having this nectar of like ideas, and I just want to just kind of put it somewhere and and see if I'm making sense, and maybe share that with you just to kind of get something rolling. So the topic I want to discuss today with Jason, as he's just staring at me until I finish talking here, um, is that, and I think it's a very common gap that our store leaders face at work. And I think Jason and I can both speak for store leaders. Jason's been a store leader. I've been a store leader. Pretty sure that I was the first store leader to beat the pay plan, although Jason might deny it. But the current pay, not the current pay plan, the old pay plan before that. But it's a problem that we've both faced, and I think it still holds true to this day, and that is not having enough time to coach. I've been on, Jason's been on way more Power 4 calls than I have. And Jason, on every call that I've been on, that's a common issue I've heard. Well, what about you?
Nobody, nobody has enough time, right? Like
Right.
it's uh, it's an elusive commodity for sure, always expiring. So making time, finding time, often talked about in many Power Fours, and really every leadership conversation at all levels. And store leaders have they bear a brunt of it with a lot of wild things that they face on the day to day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to just say that we're hearing this on Power 4 calls, right? This is just this is just something that causes stress, and a decent amount of stress for our store leaders. And so I filmed these two videos yesterday, and different. Well, it might be a couple of days when we send this audio file out, but because I just had some ideas, and I also wanted to just kind of rant a little bit about how, like, is it realistic, is it unrealistic, how are we setting aside time, and I want to highlight this one store leader, and I obviously won't mention their name here, but um, when they started, something they told me on their new hire check-ins or when I was doing their store leader training was, Samal, this is unlike any management job I've had. And I was like, well, what do you
Hmm.
mean? And they were like, well, I feel like I'm not doing a whole lot of managing. Like, I feel like things are fairly automated, and I mean, there's not a really, like I'm not bookkeeping, or I'm not like not running like a traditional retail store here. I'm like, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, is it? I think it's EOS where we talk about I know it's How to Be a Great Boss. It's one of their books, and they talk about how you manage things, but you lead people.
LMA,
And
right? It's in every leader's accountability chart throughout our organization. Lead,
exactly,
manage, and accountability. Yeah.
boom, there you go. And I told her, um, that's why we're not. That's why you're not called a store manager. You're called a store leader. You're leading your teams. You're coaching your teams And coaching is very much part of our jobs, like yours, mine, store leaders, district leaders, RSDs, like everybody.
Core process.
Corporate, yeah, it is. There you go, Jason.
Shameless plug.
It's the core process, and so and this thought came to me afterwards. But where this whole not having time to coach really stemmed from my last Power 4 call, where the store leader short-staffed. All right, and I mean, this poor guy, he's like, just like, I just don't have time to coach. I'm plugging the holes. We've got customers that are coming in, and which is a great problem to have, right? You're having that traffic, and he was really stuck as to what to do, because he felt the obligation that he had, that is to coach his team. Like, our teams deserve to be coached by us.
Which is awesome. Like, right there, like, this is kudos to him for feeling that obligation and recognizing it's important, and being stuck in this quandary of, where do I spend my time? Where do I invest my time? Right?
Exactly.
So sorry to interrupt, but that's awesome. To this point, to get to that spot where you're like, ugh, I want to help my team out, but am I helping them out by taking the next 7 customers, or I'm helping them out by coaching? So I'll let you carry on with your story. Sorry.
But 100%. No, I really appreciate you digging, you staying curious and going down the rabbit hole on that one. And so now, obviously, I think like about February or March, I was reading The Advice Trap by Michael Bungay Steiner. Like, this guy probably had a tough childhood with that last name. But anyway,
MBS, I like to call him MBS.
MBS, there we go, Michael Bungay Steiner. Anyway, he has this book called The Advice Trap, and it's phenomenal. I think Jason, did you recommend this read to us?
So this is the sequel to The Coaching Habit.
Boom, there it is.
Which we introduced 2 summits ago for the store leaders that are at our retreat back then in Fargo. And no, I didn't recommend this book. Tracy and I actually fell into this one at the exact same time. We've been on MBS's email list since then, and we both found it at the same time. So I think Tracy got it into your world, and I also fell in love with it. It's awesome.
And I love this book because this is, like, seriously. So it's called The Advice Trap, and this session today is definitely not a plug on you reading this book, but they talk about us being advice monsters on a day-to-day basis, because we're trying to be helpful. We're trying to plug those holes. And then we want to, are we empowering our teams, or are we just giving advice for the sake of giving advice because we think it's the right thing to do and whatnot? But when I filmed those 2 videos, or even on that Power 4 call, I felt like, and I told that team that I was on the call with, when he said, I don't have time to coach, I was like, hey, I hate to be an advice monster, but I think I have a pretty good idea on something we can try. In Crucial Accountability, and again, we've got virtual coming up pretty soon. So for those of you that haven't taken Crucial Accountability, boom, you're going to be on it. I'm pretty positive. So they talk about, if you can make it easy for your people, it will naturally make it motivating. So why not make it easy on yourself, so you would naturally be motivated to do it?
Right.
Like, this Christmas, I bought this little knockoff Peloton. It's just like a couple $100 less. So it's the Echelon, and I think I've been on it 4 times, and I'm still paying like $88 a month for it. It's a full 45-minute session, which honestly, you have the time if you make the time. But again, I think of our store leaders. We're like, well, you should make the time. Well, okay, it's easy to say that. What does that look like? So at this call, I told them, hey, I have an idea. What if we just introduced one little thing at the beginning of our sales partner shifts, and then we observed it to see if it happened? And he was like, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, all of this, a lot of our poor habits stem from the fact that we are not following our sales process.
Yeah.
And and going through this virtual bootcamp slides, doing the refresh, Jason, I was going through the slides, I was going through these notes, and I was reading that toothpaste analogy. And I think that was your analogy where you said, if you know, the understand phase, or not asking, not or glazing over the understand phase in the sales process is a whole lot like brushing your teeth without taking the time to squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube. Your teeth will get brushed, but throughout the day your breath's gonna stink. It's not complete.
Right.
It's the most glazed over process in our sales, in our glazed over section in our sales process. So we're not understanding as much as we should. We're not staying curious. So I suggested to the store leader, I said, hey, what if at the beginning of their shift, beginning of the sales partner shift, they just set a quick expectation that, hey, listen, I want you to try out this one question today. I want to hear you ask your guests this one question. Not just that one question, but include that one question in your more.
Sure.
And he was like, well, okay, what does that look like? And I said, well, here's the thing. You might think you don't have time to observe your sales floor because you're also helping guests, but a question where you've set the expectation with your team would count as a trigger, so you will subconsciously alert yourself when you hear that being said. I'm like, oh, perfect, I heard that. Well, let's see how the conversation goes. You're not observing the full interaction. You're not observing it from start to finish. But the second you hear that question, your ears get a little bit perked up. And if you don't hear it, now you know it just didn't happen. And he was fully bought in. He was like, okay, that sounds easy. And he was motivated to do so. But then I got a call from him this week. And he's like, hey, I just talked with my district leader and we came up with a game plan. Now, Jason, he's wincing a little bit. He's like, well, Samal, you gave an idea. Did you really co-create that solution?
Nah.
Did you not? I feel like I'm gonna get a slap on the wrist here, and he's smiling. But
I was just letting you roll. We were gonna get there. I had some curious questions ready. What happened on the phone call though? Now my interest is piqued.
So on the phone call, I was like, so he's like, hey, Samal, I know we talked about this game plan. Again, that was my game plan, not his game plan.
Yeah.
Right? And this is like one of those anyway. So he's like, so I said, okay, so what's your game plan? What are you gonna do? He's like, well, I talked with my district leader and I'm gonna make time to coach. And at this point, I'm just like, oh my gosh, okay. Now, the original issue was you don't have time,
right?
But now all of a sudden you're going to make time. Well, what does that look like? And he's like, well, I'm just gonna set aside 2 hours to, every day that I'm going to tell my people that I'm going to be observing them, and I'm not going to help any guests. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Now, my spidey senses are just going nuts at this point because I'm like, okay, well, I feel like this is what we were having issues with.
Yeah.
But now we're going to do it. And I'm not saying, it's not that I don't believe him. I love the conscious effort,
right,
or the mindset, but I can see the potential pitfalls.
Right.
I'm sure you can too. But I was like, hey, you know what? What do we talk about in the coaching process? It's like, hey, you know what? You're right. This is what you want to try out. Let's have you try this out. Something I remember Brady telling me at the very beginning was, Samal, I want you to fail big, and I want you to fail fast. And that's kind of always like stuck with me, where like, hey, you know what? If someone has an idea that they're passionate about, I'm gonna let them try it out, and then we'll recap it. We'll have a conversation around it, and then maybe I might look at some potential pitfalls, and then we'll co-create that solution. But now I get it. Now Jason's like, oh, but you didn't, so now you're using it. So anyway, I was on a power phone call this morning, and I'll tell you what I found out about that afterwards. But Jason, what are your thoughts so far?
So I like when you said, "Oh, that was my plan, not his plan," which is why that plan deviated before it even got implemented, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. You thought you had, go back to your pet, Peloton echelon, whatever. Go back to that analogy. You thought you had arrived at a very appealing 45 minutes on an echelon with a, hey, just ask this one question in the morning, when in fact it was not appealing, and he was not willing to make time for that deal. So, this whole story is like everything's good. Like this desire to coach, an obligation to coach is so good. How we get to a spot where we have the time to do it is so interesting. So you referenced the Vice Trap, and I said that was a sequel to The Coaching Habit.
Right.
The Coaching Habit would heavily influenced our coaching process. Heavily influenced. There's 7 questions in The Coaching Habit that he outlines as just solid go-to questions for a coaching conversation. I get to review that book with our LDPers, and we actually did that pretty recently here. And every time we work through those questions, there's one question he recommends after you've identified a coaching objective and you've made a really long list of all the potential reasons or options. Focus on what that person truly wants to get out of this coaching conversation. Find out what support you can give them. The question is, if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to?
Oh, nice. Okay.
And every LDP to this point, the major takeaway is very sacrificial. Like, okay, yes, I'll say yes to an extra shift at the expense of my family. And that's not really what the spirit of that question means in a coaching conversation. So like if I was talking to the Power 4 store leader that you're referencing here, I would ask him, okay, cool. You're going to say yes to 2 hours of coaching observation. What are you saying no to?
No, okay.
Because you're not getting 26 hours in that day, right? Like you're still bound to 24 hours.
Oh yeah.
And that's what that question is meant to identify. Like you're saying yes to a new behavior that both you and the coach recognize as valuable. Like I want to say yes to that Peloton. We both recognize that it's important. What am I going to say no to? What poor behavior am I going to say no to? So it might be, I got to get some operational stuff done before we open instead of during the day. Or it might be, I got a floor host instead of one person deep, making me jump onto a cash wrap or grab a mobile POS. Like we got to be comfortable with that. Like I gotta say no to that trigger, right? So that's the interest. When I hear that, like, cool, say yes to the Peloton, but make sure you know what you're saying no to, so that those triggers don't take you down the same path.
Very nice.
Which was your concern, right? Like, okay, how are you gonna make time if you haven't been able to make time before? So identifying the new behavior is great. That's half the battle, majority of the battle, really. But if you don't identify what it's replacing, the poor behavior and or behavior that just needs to be replaced to create space for it, you'll still fall into the same trap.
You know, I love that you mentioned new behaviors. And, you know, I remember in Earn the Right, back in the day. When
Old school.
Oh, yeah. They talked about how we often coach to the concept and not the behavior behind it.
Yeah.
So when I hear someone saying making time for something or making time to coach, that's a concept in my mind.
Sure.
That's not that doesn't even register as a behavior.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not calling anybody out. Like this is just like me telling me like I want to make time for my echelon. That's not a behavior if you really think about it.
Right.
Because is it that you are doing that will lead to that actually going through or following through with it? So the concept is making time. So when that store leader said that, that's where I was like, I got a little bit nervous, and I'm like, okay, what does that look like? Because he's short-staffed, and I just didn't want him to shoot himself in the foot, because I've been a sales partner, I've been a store leader, and the stink eye you get from your sales partners when you're not helping your guests, and the stink eye you get from your customers or your guests when you're not helping them. And this is your baby, right? This is your store. This is your business.
Which is why.
Sorry.
Which is why rounding that plan out, like you said, so I'm going to make time for my echelon by reducing my PlayStation by 2 hours a week.
Right.
So or I'm going to make time for coaching my employees by being a floor host, and I'm going to communicate that to my employees on the front end so they understand why I'm not grabbing a mobile POS. Like rounding that plan out is really what sets you up for success. So that those, like redundant here, but so that those same triggers don't drive you back to the old behavior.
Exactly, because I think we talk about in crucial accountability. We talk about gaps. That's like the foundation of it, right?
Yeah.
You expect something and you observe something completely different.
Yeah.
So the expectation is that we make time. You observe that there's no time. And right now, if we don't complete that sentence, finish that thought with the well, I'm going to make time by, I feel like we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Right.
And for the store leaders and the district leaders and the RSs that listen to this, I'm not at all knocking on this idea and where this conversation was going with this store leader. This was just giving me food for thought, because this might be what we're allowing to happen with our sales staff. How many concepts that they're saying that they'll do are we agreeing to when we're not letting? And again, the coaching process pulls out the you're gonna do this by doing what? Like, let's create the solution. If you're just agreeing to like, well, like even on my virtual store visits sometimes, Jason, I'll have sales partners, and I'm hurting myself by asking them, and I'm like, hey, what are some goals that you want to hit this month? I want to get my pull through 20%.
Like that.
Now, sorry.
I like that.
Well, I like that too.
Beautiful concept. Beautiful concept.
Beautiful concept. So, what are the behaviors
that
will lead to that?
Right.
So, I've been, where in some cases where I feel like, they're just not just saying that just to kind of be they're not trying to be lackadaisical, but rather it's more so I would set up a goal where I'm like, hey, can I have you tally how many times this week you've asked a pull through question or asked a question that may lead to pull through? Could you do that for me? They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, no, I mean, at the end of your shift, like, or at the end of every guest, you just kind of tally, like, make a little tally, like, okay, had a pull through conversation, had a pull through conversation, had a pull through conversation. And you might think that's very rudimentary, and really, what does that do? But it just triggers. It's just repetition, and it triggers. It's still a step in the right direction versus I'm gonna get pulled through at 20%.
Yeah.
Well, what does that look like? What are you gonna do? And then when they realize that, oh my gosh, I've got 5 pull through conversations this week. Okay, how many guests did you see? 10. Okay, all right. So now we can see that we're still diagnosing, right? So anyway, I might be digressing here a little bit, but when I called you yesterday and I told you that I'm going to post these 2 videos about my thoughts, and you said, you mentioned how we're not co-creating, and that's definitely something I didn't do because the store leader had a different idea in mind.
In a video, yeah, hard to, when you're just talking to a camera, hard to co-create.
Right.
Yeah, for
100%.
sure.
And at that point, I just had to be an advice monster, and we might be in just similar situations too. And so I think I'm just going to tell the team what I found out from this Power 4 call this morning. The store leader was able to give himself 1 hour, and he got oh gosh, I wrote this down. He got 3 SPCFs and a calling guide.
Nice.
Form done. I'm like, hells yeah, baby.
Nice.
That's what's up. So now, am I eating humble pie? Absolutely not. What I did was I gave him what I thought would work, and he tried his own thing and he ran with it. That is the beauty of your sales partners coming up with their own ideas, and just like in this case, your store leader coming up with his own idea, and if this was a concept. But the behavior was he set aside that time, and I might need to follow up more on that. But I think it's really cool that it worked out, and now he's naturally more motivated to do that because he's like, you know what, he wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm. And that would be interesting to be a fly on that wall, of the district leader and that store leader evaluating. Okay, you found that hour. How'd you do that? Like what of that is then sustainable to next week, next month, next year? Right? Like,
and that's sustainability, absolutely.
And that's hard to do sometimes. I naturally am reflective, introspective, constantly judging myself. So, but in the moment, it's not easy to take a look and see, okay, what behavior was that, and why did it yield this result? But that would be cool to talk through that with that store later and be like, how'd you find an hour? The hour was very conceptual. What what did you have to do to get that hour?
Yes, I
Yeah.
love that. And 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 maybe this is where I'm like having two trains of thought, two train of thoughts here, two trains of thought, is that when our sales partners are like, "Hey, I got two pull throughout today," we're so quick to high five and celebrate, but then are we taking that time to find out what did you think you did that got you these results? And then letting them realize that, oh, you know what, I actually did this. Okay, perfect.
And will that work next time? Will that work
Exactly.
100
And then
customers from now? Like, those are awesome questions.
yeah. I mean, is it a fluke? Is it a one-time thing, or is it a sustainable thing? And I think the coaching process definitely helps with that, because you're having those structured conversations.
That's an interesting. I hadn't even thought of it, just you saying that. The coaching process. Again, I want this store leader there. We've kind of started talking about, or we've been talking about, like, such noble desire, and I love that. Like, that
Absolutely.
is so good, despite the fact that sometimes coaching has such a stigma around it. Like, oh, poor performance, gotta go coach it. Oh, they screwed up, gotta go coach it. Oh, late for work, gotta go coach it. You're always using coaching to react to poor situations. Hey, I just got this done and it's awesome, and you high five. That's great. The time you spend identifying what worked and what can be done to move forward, that's coaching too. And that's coaching success, right?
Yeah.
And that,
Absolutely.
the more we can do that too, reduces the stigma of what coaching can be construed as.
I really appreciate you saying that, Jason, because and I think I forgot to put that in my notes that I'm looking at right now, as unstructured as this is, but this perception, and maybe you can help really shed some light on this, and see if we're on the, if you're thinking right or not. This perception of you need a whole lot of time to coach. Do you need a whole lot of time to coach? Like, I mean, I love that you said that the time you take to just see, what are those behaviors that worked or not. Having that conversation alone, I mean, when I look at this coaching process right now, I love it, obviously, because, I like to drink the Kool-Aid really, a lot.
Guzzle it. Guzzle that Kool-Aid, Samal.
I'm guzzling it. I'm swimming in it. But I look at it, and I remember us having a conversation like, hey, I think we need a box here. We need a box here. And, like, more notes, more notes, more notes. Now, I can see a store leader who wears so many hats in our store, who has so much going on, looks at this and they're like, oh, man, this looks like a whole 1 hour conversation. Does it need to be a 1 hour conversation? Does it, let's talk more about how long it takes to have a coaching process conversation. And how long can it be? How little can it be? How long can it be? How short?
I'll reference back to the coaching habit again. The subtitle of that is, what is the subtitle? Say less, ask more, and change the way you lead forever. Say less, ask more.
You're actually wearing pants. That's awesome.
I just stood up on an audio. Yeah.
I'm not gonna stand up.
Okay.
I'm gonna start kicking you.
You asked a question about how long it takes to coach. I don't, all over the place, right? Like, depends on the objective, depends on how high stakes of a conversation it is. So many factors. When you talk about time, though, I think what we're really gunning towards here is that you can have quick coaching conversations. My belief is we all have an instinctual cadence or go-to coaching style.
Sure.
Like, just if we hired someone tomorrow and said, go coach that person, they're gonna do their version of coaching.
Sure.
Why I like the process concept, both
coaching process
and sales process as well.
Sure. Okay.
We've got a framework of a conversation that we've proven is effective, right?
Absolutely.
The more you work through that framework in your own way, but at least rope in some of the process and some of the proven language, the proven questions, you'll become instinctually better
Yeah.
at coaching.
Yes.
And when you're instinctually better at coaching, I believe you get to your root cause or co-create your behavior after you've identified your root cause faster. I think you can do that faster because you're just more effective at your questioning skills. And that's really what all you're doing. That's all you're doing in the sales process as well. We're asking a pile of questions to find out enough about a customer so we can personalize a recommendation, right? And coaching is the same. We just need to ask the right questions so that we can personalize and co-create a behavior change and then on with our day. So those things can happen very, very quickly, very, very long. But I think the more you do it, the more effective you are, shrinks the amount of time necessary for it.
Perfect. And you articulated that really well, as you always do. Um, Definitely, the goal isn't shortening it. The goal isn't to have a quick conversation, but with familiarity and practice, that will naturally be part of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Like it'll be part of your, like, is the lexicon the right word I'm
Yeah.
using? It'll be the lexicon where you'll just naturally ask those questions. Like you'd be surprised at how many sales partners or how many store leaders are like, ah man, my district leader asks me what else all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, there's nothing else, bro. But we're now naturally asking what else. And when did we introduce that concept?
That's 2 retreats ago. That's the awe question. The awe question of coaching habit. Yeah.
And now what else is like part of our, like, it's just it just happens.
Right.
Like, oh, what else? So I love that you said that, familiarity, practice, more how often you do it. These questions will become part of your language.
Yeah.
And therefore you will have, so you don't need to have a backroom one-on-one. This might even be in the inventory room in between guests.
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's awesome. I heard you ask that question. Fantastic. What are you going to do next? Okay, perfect. Now, anything that might derail that? Okay, perfect. Co-create, boom, get agreement, move on.
Right. Yes. As long as you're staying mindful of the effectiveness of your vernacular, as you said, or lexicon. You said lexicon. As long as you're staying mindful of the effectiveness of your lexicon. Say that again.
English is not my first language. Vernacular, vocabulary, like, they're all V words. I'm just going to take it.
You represent it well.
You read a lot of books. Sorry. Anyway, time of vernacular.
Yeah. As long as you stay mindful of the effectiveness, just even you talking about that and what else question, like that can become jargonized as well, where it's just like, oh, they just keep at. But if you genuinely want to know and what else, it has a difference. So you just got to stay mindful of the effectiveness as your instincts change, and it'll be awesome.
I appreciate you saying that. Absolutely, being mindful of the effectiveness of that. Oh man, Jason, you're gonna write a book anytime soon? I think it's time. Let's make this happen. We'll be mobile. We'll publish it and we'll make it work. Thank you, Jason. How long have we been recording for?
We have, I believe, about 30 minutes.
Okay, so I think that's about the attention span I want to. What's the word I'm looking for? I want to.
If anybody, Samal, if anybody made it this far in this thing, like, I love them, and I want them to slack me and tell me they made it this far.
I have a nugget of gold that I want to just share right before we end this.
Oh.
That I heard from the district leader on this morning Power 4 call. I feel like none of these are original thoughts. They're all like things that just like gathered from everywhere. But
it's Samal. Hey, there's gonna be a lot of people that have heard me say this, and I don't care. I'll keep saying it. I've built a career on stealing other people's ideas and just trying to implement them better. So, no original thought, I believe, is what you've often uttered as well.
Yep, absolutely. This district leader just dropped this nugget, and this doesn't pertain to our conversation so far, but I felt like I just want to share it.
Okay.
He said, especially in this time right now, don't apologize to your guests. Thank them. This is completely a different conversation here, but how often are we like, oh, I'm so sorry for the wait. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry about this. Rather be like, hey, thank you for being patient.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that is so sexy.
Yeah.
I was like, yes. Yes. I'm glad that we had this conversation today. I feel like I grow every day when I talk to our leaders, and if our leaders can hear more ideas about what other leaders are saying, they will grow as a team and people as well. But what I'd like to do is when we do post this file, Jason, I think I have a request for the team, and that is if they have found efficient ways to make time for coaching, or if they've found the behaviors that have helped them fulfilling this concept of
Yeah.
making time.
Yeah.
I would love, love for them to share that.
When you've said yes to making time, what have you said no to, right?
When you finally decided to say yes to making time, I love it. When it's your own want. I like that. Yes. And again, there's a store leader who told me this is unlike anything I've done before. I love it. Like,
welcome to the fam, huh?
Sorry?
Welcome to the fam, right?
Welcome to the fam. And honestly, she said it in a very positive way. And again, I was like, yes, I love that you said that, because yes, this is not a traditional job where you sit in a corner office and you just kick your feet up and no. We are, what's that thing you always say that I tell people that you always say? We are responsible for people's livelihoods. Yeah. Right? Happy, healthy. How does it go again?
Yes, I come to work every day to help contribute to happy, healthy, and successful employees.
Boom. That's it. We're not looking at charts and targets, and we're doing a whole lot more than that. And to the store leader, who I've used as an example in this Power 4 calls, you know who you are. I love the conversations we have on these Power 4 calls. This guy's struggling with staffing, and yet he understands that his sales partners need it, and they deserve his coaching, and he's come up with his own ideas. He's making that time. I love it. Like this, it makes me really happy to be a part of all this. So that is it. That's all I got, Jason. Any other parting thoughts? Any nuggets?
No, I love that you sent me your videos from yesterday. I think my original Slack response was, "I love your brain," and I'll call you in a minute. Yep. And then us just chatting through it is just, that was awesome. I love waxing philosophical with you.
Boom! There you go. I like it. So am I Karate Kid and you're Mr. Miyagi, or how is that?
Should we drop a wax on and then wax off and end audio right at off? Is that what you want to do?
I'm ready for that. Ready?
Wax on.
Wait, who's saying wax on? Am I saying wax on, or you saying wax on?
We ruined this. A couple of dads screwing up dad jokes. Small.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. All right, B-Mobile, I love you. Please look forward to more audio, actual podcasts for just you, because we have not forgotten about giving you guys training. I know your sales partners get a lot of visible love on Slack, but you are all definitely on our minds. And I personally, in my how many years, I've grown because of these kind of conversations I've had with leadership. And I've been very fortunate to be able to be in these conversations and in these meetings, and even in the capacity of being a fly on the wall. And this was my motivation and Jason's motivation to include this conversation, which was honestly not scripted. We're completely
right.
Quite a few tangents and dad jokes. But if you gain something out of it, that's fantastic. Let us know. But like I said, feel free to use the chat, the thread, and let us know if you were able to make time and how you did it. That's all I got. Wax on.
Wax off.